Mainstream science tells us that the brain is the origin of consciousness, but is it true? Let's look at the following facts and let me know what you think in the comments. Let's start by watching this video.
When I first started looking into near-death experiences back in the late 1970s, I assumed that there would be some physiological explanation for that. What I found over the decades was that the various simple explanations we could think of, like lack of oxygen, drugs given to the people, and so forth, don't pan out. The data do not support them. And furthermore, the phenomena of NDEs, of near-death experiences, seem to defy a simple materialistic explanation. When we first started presenting this material in medical conferences, there would be a polite silence in the audience. And now, in the 21st century, when we do this, it's rare that doctors don't stand up in the audience and say, let me share my experience with you. So it's pretty well accepted now that these are common experiences that people have all the time and that have profound effects. There's still, of course, a lot of controversy about what causes them, but not about the fact that they exist and are fairly common. I'm Bruce Grayson. I'm a professor emeritus of psychiatry and neurobehavioral sciences at the University of Virginia Medical School. And I've recently come out with a book called After: A Doctor Explores What Near-Death Experiences Reveal About Life and Beyond. Near-death experiences are profound subjective experiences that many people have when they come close to death, or sometimes when they are in fact pronounced dead. And they include such difficult to explain phenomena as a sense of leaving the physical body, reviewing one's entire life, encountering some other entities that aren't physically present, and at some point coming to a point of no return beyond which they can't continue and still come back to life. When they return, they often are profoundly changed by this experience. As I started my psychiatric training, I started being confronted by patients' reports of things that I couldn't explain. One happened to me when I was just a few weeks into my training. I was asked to see a patient who had overdosed in the emergency room. And I was in the cafeteria when the page came in, and I was eating dinner, and the page startled me, and I dropped my fork, spilling spaghetti sauce on my tie. Couldn't wipe it off, so I just covered it over with a lab coat so no one would see it. And then I went down to the emergency room to see the patient, and she was completely unconscious. I could not revive her. But her roommate was waiting to see me down the hall in another room. So I went down to the other room, talked to the roommate for about 15 or 20 minutes, and there was no air conditioning back in the 70s, so I unbuttoned my lab coat so I wouldn't sweat so much, exposing the stain for about 10 minutes or so. And then went back to see the patient. She was still unconscious. When I went to see her in the morning, I introduced myself, and she stopped me and said, I know who you are. I remember you from last night. That puzzled me, so I said something like, well, I'm surprised. I thought you were unconscious when I saw you last night. She looked at me and said, not in my room. I saw you talking to my roommate down the hall. She sensed my confusion and started to tell me about the conversation I had with her roommate, where we were sitting, what we were talking about. And finally, she said, and you had a striped tie on with a red stain on it. That just blew me away. I didn't know how to deal with that. I couldn't think of.
Well, uh, these experiences, they are all around the internet. And today we'll just go through a few of these. Um, Despite the wide variation of these experiences, this man in front of you, his name is Dr. Raymond Moody. He's a psychiatrist and a philosopher. He's among the pioneers in the study of near-death experiences. Um, he wrote a book about his research on near-death experiences, and the research was about a study on near-death experiences. This is the title of the book. The research was about 150 subjects. So the first category was experiences of persons who were resuscitated after having been thought, adjudged, or pronounced clinically dead by their doctors. The second group was experiences of people who, in the course of accidents or severe injury or illness, they came very close to physical death. And the third group was experiences of people who, as they died, they told them to other people who were present. Later, those other people reported the content of the death experience to the researcher. So, among all these groups, the researcher tried to eliminate the third category. It was not preferred in this research because it's not first-hand information. However, one can note that the first group, the researcher found they had the most dramatic experiences of all these groups. So, based on what they told the researcher, he developed a model of the near-death experience. So the researcher says a man or a woman is dying, and thus he reaches the point of greatest physical distress. He hears himself pronounced dead by his doctor. He begins to hear an uncomfortable noise, loud ringing or buzzing, and at the same time feels himself moving very rapidly through a long dark tunnel. After this, he suddenly finds himself outside of his own physical body, but still in the immediate physical environment, and he sees his own body from a distance, though he is a spectator. He watches the resuscitation attempt from his unusual vantage point and is in a state of emotional upheaval. After a while, he collects himself and becomes more accustomed to his odd condition. He notices that he still has a body, but none of a very different nature, and with very different powers from the physical body he has left behind. Soon other things begin to happen. Others come to meet and to help him. He glimpses the spirits of relatives and friends who have already died in the loving, warm spirit of a kind he has never encountered before. A being of light appears before him. This being asks him a question, non-verbally, to make him evaluate his life and helps him along by showing him a panoramic, instantaneous playback of the major events of his life. At some point, he finds himself approaching some sort of barrier or border, apparently representing the limit between earthly life and the next life. Yet, he finds that he must go back to the earth, that the time for his death has not yet come. At this point, he resists, for by now he is taken up with his experiences in the afterlife and does not want to return. He is overwhelmed by intense feelings of joy, love, and peace. Despite his attitude, though he somehow reunites with his physical body and lives. Later he tries to tell others, but he has trouble doing so. In the first place, he can find no human words adequate to describe these unearthly episodes. He also finds that others scoff, so he stops telling other people. Still, the experience affects his life profoundly, especially his views about death and its relationship to life. Well, this is from the book Life After Life by Dr. Raymond Moody. If you're interested, you can read the whole book, but this is just a model of it is just a model of near-death experiences as crafted by him. This was done a long time ago. There is some research studies that are currently being done, and we can look at one of those. It was done in Michigan. The study was done in, it was a retrospective study of patients who died in the NICU at Michigan Medicine, University of Michigan since 2014. And the study was done on 4 patients. who passed away while undergoing electroencephalography monitoring. This is a machine that looks at brain waves. So once these waves are no longer detectable, the person's brain is actually dead. So this will be monitored due to cardiac arrest. So sometimes it happens that someone's heart dies before the brain actually dies. So these are people who had uh, clinically heart death, but the brain was still being monitored. So three of the patients they already had some cardiac conditions before, and the other one did not have any issue. So this study found that as someone dies, instead of it is contrary to what we expect. So we expect that during uh, reduced brain activity secondary to heart death, we expect a reduction in brain activity. But this is not what happens. What happens is that upon reduced blood supply to the brain, as the person dies, instead brain activity increases for a for some time, for a short moment. There is a transient increase in brain activity. So this is what the researchers found in this study. They found that some brain waves, specifically in the group of gamma waves, they increase instead of decreasing. So these gamma waves, they are they originate from a brain area thought to be the source of consciousness, but it is still on the other side. Because if the brain is the source of consciousness, we expect that as the brain activity reduces close to death, they we don't expect people to experience these experiences of seeing things, seeing themselves outside of their body. So this study provides some evidence that consciousness consciousness arises externally from our brain, partly. As for now, we are challenging a concept we presented some time ago on this topic. Uh, some time ago, we said that the brain is the center of consciousness, which is what mainstream science teaches. It says that consciousness, uh, consciousness is a higher cerebral function, but evidence from these experiences, the gamma study we talked about, it is against this fact. So, but then what? So, a friend of mine, after making this previous video, he came to me and said, "But Raymond, what proves that that humans have the spiritual dimension? Probably these near-death experiences provide some glimpse into the existence of the consciousness afterlife, which people call different names depending on their beliefs. So some will call it a soul, some will call it, I don't know, but this is an evidence of existence of consciousness after life. But even if it can be not that kind of evidence, it is also proof that at least consciousness arises external to our brain. Because it's not reasonable to find a dying brain being active, like creating waves. Because science says energy is not random, it's not If the energy being generated by the brain is reducing, we expect the activity of the brain to reduce also. However, there are some skeptical uh, views about this approach. Some studies said that a dying brain, due to low oxygen, produces a molecule known as DMT, and this DMT, it is a psychedelic. Psychedelic compounds are compounds that can alter the perception of the brain. So they say that this DMT might induce hallucinations, and these hallucinations are what a dying person is seeing. However, this is also, even if it is somehow valid and it's also proven that is released in a dying brain, this is also questionable because, by definition, hallucinations, they are perceptions. So, hallucinations, by definition, is when someone is perceiving, using the body senses, perceiving something that is not there, like seeing something that's not there or hearing something that's not there. But we should remind ourselves that for a perception to happen, there should be a brain processing it. So you cannot say that dying person is hallucinating. Well, let me know what you think in the comment section.